After months of lies, my wife finally confessed that she wanted a divorce. She said our two daughters didn't belong to me and she only stayed with me out of pity. I had never been hit this hard, but I had to make a decision and it was supposed to be fast. Hello. Thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Lynette Anderson from Trinidad. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's dive into the details of today's story. I used to believe in love. Not the kind you see in movies, the kind you build. The kind where you wake up every morning and choose your person over and over again. That's what I had with Olivia. Or at least, that's what I thought. For 10 years, I worked my ass off, building a business from the ground up, making sure my wife and daughters had the best life possible. The big house, the vacations, the luxury, none of it was handed to me. I earned every damn thing I had. And I thought Olivia saw that. I thought she appreciated it. But lately, something had shifted. She stopped looking at me the same way. Our conversations felt forced, hollow, like she was just going through the motions. Late nights at book club turned into entire weekends away with vague excuses. And when she was home, she barely even acknowledged me. I noticed it, of course. Any man would. But I told myself it was a rough patch. That things would get better. That we just needed time. Then, one night, everything changed. It was past midnight when she came home. I was sitting in the dark, waiting. No texts. No calls. Just silence. When she finally walked in, she barely reacted to seeing me there. No guilt. No surprise. She just sighed like I was an inconvenience and tossed her purse on the counter. I kept my voice calm. Controlled. Where were you? She pulled off her heels and rubbed her temples, exhausted. I told you, Ethan. Out with friends. I stood. Don't lie to me. Her eyes met mine, and for the first time in months, I saw something real in them. Not love. Not guilt. Just indifference. And that's when I knew. Who is he? I asked. My voice was steady, but inside, something was cracking. Olivia didn't answer right away. She just looked at me like I was someone she used to know. Then, after a long pause, she exhaled and dropped the bomb that would change my life forever. The girls aren't yours, Ethan. Silence. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I stared at her, my mind refusing to process what she had just said. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Like the air had been stolen from my lungs. What did you just say? My voice barely sounded like my own. She shrugged. I thought you knew. Or at least suspected. Suspected? The daughters I tucked into bed every night? The little girls who ran into my arms after school? My entire family? I took a step back, my hands clenched at my sides. How long? Olivia didn't flinch. Since the beginning. Since the beginning. 10 years. 10 years of my life wasted. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something, to throw the nearest object against the wall. But I didn't. Because she wasn't worth it. Instead, I asked one final question. Why? That was the moment she hesitated. The first time she actually looked uncertain. Maybe even a little guilty. I didn't want to hurt you, she finally said. And I stayed because I felt bad for you. Bad for me. That was it. Not love. Not regret. Just pity. I looked at the woman standing in front of me, and for the first time, I saw her clearly. She wasn't the Olivia I fell in love with. She wasn't my wife. She was just a stranger who had worn a mask for a decade. And now, that mask had fallen. I took a deep breath, forcing every emotion down. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Instead, I turned, grabbed my jacket, and walked to the door. Ethan, she called after me. Where are you going? I didn't answer. I just stepped outside, letting the cold night air hit me like a slap to the face. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do next. But one thing was clear. I was going to find the truth. And when I did, I would make damn sure I never lost again. Betrayal has a taste. It's bitter, metallic, like blood in your mouth after taking a hit you never saw coming. For days, I walked around in a daze, my mind replaying Olivia's words over and over. The girls aren't yours, Ethan. It wasn't enough to hear it from her. I needed proof. Cold, undeniable proof. Because if I was going to burn my life to the ground, I had to make sure the fire was justified. That's how I found myself in a sterile, windowless clinic 2 days later, staring at a white-coated technician as he handed me 2 swab kits. "You'll have results in 72 hours, he said. 72 hours. 3 days. Less time than I had spent waiting for a delayed flight, yet long enough to destroy everything I thought I knew about my life. I drove home, my knuckles white against the steering wheel. The house felt foreign when I walked inside, like I was stepping into a place that didn't belong to me anymore. Olivia was in the kitchen, acting like nothing had happened, scrolling through her phone as if she hadn't detonated a bomb in my chest. I said nothing. I just nodded at her, went upstairs, and locked my office door. If she noticed my silence, she didn't show it. She never really paid attention, did she? The email came while I was sitting at my desk, staring at nothing. "Your paternity results are ready." I clicked the link, my heartbeat slow and heavy. My hands were steady, my breathing even. Maybe part of me already knew. 2 simple words. Not a match. For both. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling through my nose. No shock, no sudden burst of rage. Just a numb acceptance of the inevitable. That was it then. I wasn't their father. Not legally. Not biologically. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and walked straight to my lawyer's office. "File for divorce," I told him. "Effective immediately." He raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure? You'll need to prepare." "I don't need to prepare. Just do it." He studied me for a moment before nodding. "Understood." I walked out feeling nothing. No sadness, no regret. Just a quiet determination to erase Olivia from my life like a bad investment gone wrong. But something still nagged at me. She had been too calm, too composed, like she had expected me to fall apart. But there was something else in her eyes, something beyond guilt. Fear. I started watching her more closely. Little things. The way she jumped whenever she got a text. The nervous way she avoided certain topics. It wasn't just about the girls. It wasn't just about the affair. She was hiding something bigger. So I did what I do best. I started digging. I hired a private investigator, an old friend from my college days who owed me a favor. It only took him 48 hours to find the truth. I sat in my car, gripping my phone as his voice came through the speaker. "Ethan, you're going to want to sit down for this." "I'm already sitting." He sighed. "It's not just some random guy. Olivia's been seeing David Langston." I blinked. The name didn't register at first. Then, slowly, the pieces clicked into place. David Langston. My business partner. My so-called friend. The man I trusted to help me build my company from nothing. I could almost hear my own laughter from months ago when David had toasted to brotherhood and loyalty at our last investors' dinner. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. "How long?" I asked, my voice deadly calm. "From what I found, at least 8 years." I let that sink in. 8 years. Almost our entire marriage. I exhaled slowly, forcing the rage down, letting it settle into something colder. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to confront him like some cheated husband in a bad movie. No, I was going to handle this my way. Because now, it wasn't just about betrayal. It was about revenge. Betrayal in business is worse than betrayal in marriage. A cheating wife wounds your pride, but a deceitful partner? That cuts deeper. That's years of trust, sweat, and sacrifice stolen. And David Langston had stolen more than just my wife. I knew Olivia was hiding something, and now I understood why. She didn't stay with me out of pity. She stayed out of fear. She wasn't afraid of losing me, she was afraid of losing the life she had built on lies. David wasn't just her lover. He was her safety net. And now, I was going to cut the net and watch them both fall. I spent the next few nights buried in financial records, poring over documents, cross-checking accounts. I had built my company from the ground up, and I knew every dollar that had ever passed through its doors. Or at least, I thought I did. David had been careful, but not careful enough. 100,000 here. 250,000 there. Siphoned off, redirected into shell corporations. Offshore accounts tied to names I didn't recognize, but names that led back to David. And Olivia? She knew. She had known for years. That's why she stayed. Not because she felt sorry for me, but because she needed to keep her cushy lifestyle intact. If I ever found out about David's fraud, everything would come crashing down. She didn't love him. She used him. Just like she used me. I sat back in my chair, staring at the spreadsheet on my screen. They thought they had me cornered. They thought wrong. I didn't confront David right away. No, that would be too easy, too predictable. And men like him? They expected anger. They expected shouting, threats, maybe even a fist to the face. I gave him none of that. Instead, I walked into the office the next morning like nothing had changed. I shook his hand, looked him in the eye, and even cracked a joke about the stock market. He had no idea I was already dismantling him. That week, I met with my lawyers, forensic accountants, and federal fraud investigators. Quietly, methodically, I built my case. Then I moved my shares into a separate holding account, secured my assets, made sure that when the hammer fell, I wouldn't go down with him. By the time I was done, David Langston was a dead man walking. The final move was a simple one. I invited David to dinner. A celebration, I told him. A night to toast to our success. He arrived at the restaurant grinning, wearing that expensive watch I had bought him years ago as a token of friendship. We sat, we drank, and for the first time in years, I enjoyed his company. Because I knew something he didn't. Before the main course arrived, I leaned forward and smiled. You know, David, I said, swirling my whiskey. There's something I've been meaning to ask you. He raised a brow. Yeah? What's that? I tilted my head. How long did you think you could steal from me before I noticed? His face froze mid-smirk. Just for a second. Then he laughed. Forced. Awkward. What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table. On the screen, a full audit of his fraud. Every wire transfer. Every offshore account. And right below it, a message from my lawyer. Everything has been sent to the authorities. I watched the blood drain from his face. You should enjoy your meal, I said, standing up. Might be the last good one you have for a while. Then I walked out, leaving him to his fate. By the next morning, the feds were all over him. Bank accounts frozen. Assets seized. Arrest warrant issued. David Langston was finished. And Olivia? She had backed the wrong horse. Because when she called me that night, voice trembling, pretending to be concerned, I didn't even answer. I just watched the phone ring, smiling to myself. She wasn't afraid of losing me. She was afraid of losing everything. And that, I realized, was the best revenge of all. Pain is fuel. Most men let heartbreak destroy them. They drown in alcohol, self-pity, or reckless decisions. But me? I took that pain, shaped it into a weapon, and forged myself into something unbreakable. David was finished. Olivia had lost her safety net. But I wasn't done. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about evolution. I started waking up at 4:30 a.m. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. My body screamed from the workouts I put it through, but I didn't stop. I ran until my legs burned. I lifted until my arms shook. Every rep, every drop of sweat, it wasn't just exercise. It was war. A war against the weakness that had allowed me to be betrayed in the first place. I became sharper, focused, disciplined. By the time the sun rose, I had already conquered the morning. And while Olivia and David were scrambling to keep their lives from falling apart, I was building something stronger than ever before. David's downfall wasn't just personal, it was professional. With his finances under investigation, investors pulled out. Clients cut ties. The company we had built together? It was now mine. I made sure of that. The board voted me in as sole CEO, and I wasted no time in making changes. I streamlined operations, negotiated smarter deals, and within months, profits skyrocketed. My name was in business magazines, my net worth doubled, and competitors started paying attention. I was no longer just a businessman. I was a force. While I was rising, they were falling. David tried to fight the fraud charges, but the evidence was overwhelming. His assets were frozen, his reputation was in shambles, and his so-called friends abandoned him overnight. The same people who used to shake his hand at galas now crossed the street to avoid him. And Olivia? She finally saw David for what he truly was. A coward. The charm that had once pulled her in was gone. No more lavish dinners, no more expensive gifts, no more security. She had left a king for a con artist, and now she was trapped in a sinking ship. One night, I got a message from an unknown number. Ethan, can we talk? I didn't respond. She had made her bed. Now she could lie in it. A few weeks later, I ran into Olivia at a restaurant. She looked different. Weaker. The confidence she once carried was gone, replaced by desperation. She approached me hesitantly, as if she was expecting me to lash out. But I didn't. I just looked at her calm, unreadable. Ethan, I just want to say I'm sorry, she murmured. I studied her for a long moment, then chuckled. Sorry. I repeated. For what? Lying? Cheating? Using me? Or are you just sorry that I didn't collapse without you? Her lip trembled. I made a mistake. I nodded. Yeah, you did. She took a deep breath. Do you think there's any way we could? A laugh then. A deep, genuine laugh. She actually thought I'd take her back. I don't go backward, I said simply. Only forward. Then I turned my back on her for the last time. I wasn't just the man Olivia betrayed anymore. I was the man she could never have again. And that was the greatest revenge of all. Weak men strike in anger. Strong men strike in silence. David thought he was untouchable. He built his web of lies carefully, layering fraud beneath charm, deception beneath handshakes. But like any coward, he had one fatal flaw. He believed no one could outplay him. He was wrong. I had spent months gathering everything I needed, documents, bank records, insider testimonies. Piece by piece, I put together the puzzle of his fraud. Offshore accounts, fake vendors, money funneled into places he thought no one would look. But I looked, and I found it all. Then, I made my move. The board meeting was packed. David sat at the head of the table, still pretending to be the powerful executive he once was. But the tension in his eyes betrayed him. He knew something was coming. He just didn't know how bad it would be. I took my seat calm, unshaken. And then, with a slow smile, I placed the folder on the table. This, I said, is everything. I flipped through pages, one by one, as I spoke. Offshore accounts, false invoices, money laundering. Every single shady deal he thought was buried had been dug up. The silence in the room was deafening. A board member, a man who had once been David's biggest supporter, cleared his throat. David, he said slowly, is this true? David's face went pale. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. The board voted immediately. David Langston, co-founder, partner, and so-called friend, was fired on the spot. Within days, the legal system caught up with him. Investigations, charges, frozen assets. The media had a field day. His name was finished. His empire was gone. And I barely had to lift a finger. When the news broke, Olivia panicked. David was her safety net, her escape plan. Now, he was nothing. No money, no power, no way to protect her from the mess they had both created. She tried to reach out. Text messages. Ignored. Voicemails. Deleted. A surprise visit to my office. Security turned her away. She had always expected me to care, to react, to chase her. But I didn't. I simply watched. Watched as she spiraled. Watched as she lost everything. Watched as the woman who once looked down on me now had nowhere left to turn. And I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. No regret. Just satisfaction. I wasn't just leaving my past behind. I was stepping into something greater. That's when I met her. Isabella. She wasn't like Olivia. She wasn't impressed by wealth or appearances. She respected power. She recognized strength. And unlike Olivia, she didn't try to control it. She was sharp, ambitious, a woman who built her own empire instead of leeching off someone else's. And from the moment we met, there was an undeniable fire between us. For the first time in a long time, I felt something real, something strong. And this time, it wasn't built on lies. It was built on power. Some men rise after failure. Others rot in it. David Langston was the latter. Once a man who walked into rooms with arrogance, now he skulked in the shadows, drowning in the very filth he created. His accounts were frozen, his name dragged through every business publication, and his so-called friends had vanished. But rats don't die easy. They claw, they bite, they grasp for whatever they can. And David? He grasped at Olivia. I knew David would reach out to her. He had nothing left, no money, no influence, no power. But he still had one last weapon: manipulation. Olivia, he had whispered over the phone, his voice trembling, I need you. She hesitated. She should have hung up. But she didn't. Because Olivia was finally feeling something she never expected. Regret. She met David in secret, thinking he had a plan, thinking he could still save them. Instead, she found a man who reeked of failure, paranoia in his eyes, stubble on his once pristine face. He begged, pleaded, told her they could still win. All she had to do was reach out to me, apologize, gain my trust, and then destroy me from within. She stared at him, realization settling deep in her gut. David never loved her. She was never his partner. She was his pawn. He used her to infiltrate my life, used her to mask his fraud. And now he wanted to use her again, to drag her down with him, to weaponize her against the only man who had ever truly provided for her. She slapped him. Hard. David stumbled back, eyes wide with shock. You were never a man, she spat. You were just a parasite. She left him there, alone in the filth of his own making. While they burned, I thrived. My business? Bigger than ever. My empire expanded into new markets, new industries, my influence reaching places David could only dream of. I was no longer just a businessman. I was a force. With power came new allies, elite investors, political connections, billionaires who respected my rise. I didn't just rebuild what David tried to take. I built something greater. And through it all, Isabella stood by my side. She wasn't just a lover. She was a partner. She matched my ambition, my hunger. She didn't need me, she chose me. Unlike Olivia, she wasn't looking for a safety net. She was looking for a king. And she found one. It started with a message. A pathetic, desperate little text from Olivia. Ethan, I made a mistake. Then another. I miss you. Then, a full voicemail, her voice trembling, her pride shattered. I should have never doubted you. I should have never betrayed you. I was wrong about everything, Ethan. Please, just, can we talk? I didn't respond. Not out of anger. Not out of hatred. But because Olivia no longer existed to me. She made her choice. And now? She had to live with it. Regret is a bitter poison. And Olivia was drowning in it. For weeks, she had been spiraling, calling, texting, trying to find some crack in my armor, some way to pull me back. But I had outgrown the man she once controlled. I ignored every message, every voicemail, every weak attempt to reach me. But Olivia wasn't done yet. She wanted her closure. Or maybe, she just wanted to beg. It was late evening when she walked into my office. She wasn't the same woman I once knew. The confidence, the arrogance, it was gone. The expensive clothes she used to flaunt had been replaced with something cheaper. Her hair wasn't as pristine, and the makeup that once covered every flaw couldn't hide the sleepless nights. But the biggest change? Her eyes. They no longer held that smug superiority, that manipulative glint. Now, they only held desperation. Ethan, she whispered, standing at my door as if she were afraid to step closer. I leaned back in my chair, silent, waiting. I wanted to hear what she had to say. She swallowed hard, took a shaky breath. I need to tell you everything. I gestured to the chair across from me. She sat down slowly, clutching her purse like it was the last thing anchoring her. And then, she began. She told me how David had fed her lies, how he had promised her a better future, one where she wouldn't have to work, where she would be taken care of, how he had manipulated her into staying with me, because as long as she was by my side, David could keep leeching off my success. And when I exposed him, when he lost everything, he had turned his back on her, just as easily as she had turned her back on me. He never loved me, she whispered, voice shaking. I was just another pawn to him. I said nothing. I let the silence sit between us, heavy and suffocating. Then, finally, she said the words I knew were coming. I made a mistake, Ethan. A terrible mistake. She blinked back tears, her hands gripping the edge of my desk. I should have never betrayed you. I should have never doubted you. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. She reached forward, her voice cracking. Can we try again? I leaned forward, my voice calm, unwavering. You didn't just lose me, Olivia. I let the words sink in, slow and deliberate. You lost the man I used to be. Her lips parted, confusion flashing across her face. The man who loved you? The man who trusted you? I shook my head. He's gone. And I will never be him again. She stared at me, stunned, like she had truly believed she had a chance. Like she thought she could just undo everything. I stood, buttoned my jacket, and walked past her without a second glance. She called my name. Her voice cracked. But I never looked back. Because Olivia was nothing more than a ghost from my past. And I was already walking into my future. A year ago, I thought betrayal had destroyed me. Now, I know it did something far greater. It rebuilt me. The ballroom shimmered with golden light, the air filled with soft laughter, clinking glasses, and the hum of a live orchestra. Powerful men and women filled the room, CEOs, politicians, world changers. And at the center of it all, me. The evening was mine. My charity, my cause, my legacy. I had built this foundation in silence, one dedicated to mentoring and supporting fatherless children. I knew what it felt like to be betrayed, to be abandoned, to question your own worth because of someone else's selfishness. No child deserved that. As I scanned the room, I saw admiration in their eyes. Respect. The same people who once whispered behind my back after Olivia's confession now sought me out. Not out of pity, but because I had risen so high, they had no choice but to acknowledge me. Somewhere, Olivia was probably still picking up the shattered pieces of her life. She had faded into irrelevance, just like David. Last I heard, he was drowning in legal battles, his name a stain in the business world. I never looked into them again. Why would I? They were nothing more than ghosts of a past that no longer belonged to me. I felt a soft hand slip into mine. Isabella. She wasn't just another woman. She was my equal. Strong, intelligent, driven. She never needed to be saved. She walked beside me, not behind me. She leaned in, whispering, "You've built something incredible, Ethan." I squeezed her hand. And this is just the beginning. As the night went on, I raised my glass, looking over the empire I had built, not just in wealth, but in self-respect, in strength, in purpose. Then, with a smirk, I said the words that had become my truth. Not all losses are losses. Some are the best wins you'll ever have. And this was the greatest win of my life. If you enjoyed this story, do well to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing stories. Don't forget to let us know what you think of this story. I will be checking the comments. See you soon in the next story.